All right, Alexander, we had tight elections in Poland. Very important race. We often talk about some of the leaders in the EU that take a very sovereigntist stance to how they deal with their internal affairs and their external affairs. I would say maybe describe it as a patriotic stance. You have Orban. You have leaders who aren't in power yet, but I'm sure will be, like Salvini, maybe a Le Pen. And, of course, you have Duda in Poland. And they just had elections in Poland. And Andrzej Duda won by a narrow margin, 51% to 49%. And his challenger was the Warsaw Mayor Rafal Trzaskowski. Trzaskowski. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
I think that's how it's pronounced, yeah.
I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Difficult name. But the Law and Justice Party, which is Duda's party, did win. And real quick, Alexander, let me just read you some headlines because the neoliberal mainstream media press, as everyone can imagine that's watching this video, is freaking out because, as I said, Duda, very much like Orban, takes a nation-statist, sovereigntist, patriotic approach to how he deals with Poland internally and externally. And he has rubbed the EU the wrong way for quite a while now. So the European Union would have very much liked to have seen him leave Poland. But he did squeak out the election victory. And this was very much also a case between, from what I'm understanding, between rural and city votes was very much split and divided, as well as older and younger votes was very much divided. But the neoliberal mainstream media is freaking out, and here are some of their titles, which are interesting. From The Atlantic: Poland's rulers made up a rainbow plague. The president and his party ginned up fear of alphabet people. I'm not going to say exactly what because YouTube is banning everybody at this point that even mentions these things. So let me just say alphabet people and rode that strategy to re-election. That's from The Atlantic, Alexander, neocon publication. From the European Council on Foreign Relations: Poland under Duda, a divided country dividing Europe. The Law and Justice Party has consolidated its power inside Poland by retaining the presidency, but battles with Brussels and a victory for Biden could cause it trouble. All right. And, of course, we go to Carnegie Europe. Boy, they're not going to say anything nice about Poland and Duda. What's Poland's presidential election mean for the EU? What Poland's presidential election means for the EU? The re-election of Polish President Andrzej Duda represents an existential threat to the European Union's legal order. After more than a decade of talk about conditionality, member states must act now. So, Alexander, get into this. As expected, the EU is freaking out. The neoliberals are freaking out. The neocons are freaking out. But Duda squeaked through and got a victory.
I mean, I think the first thing I'm going to say, and I just want to get this out of the way, that there's an awful lot about the policies of the Law and Justice Party that I disagree with. I mean, I think their policy towards Russia is completely wrong, to give one example. Same with their policy towards Ukraine. But the point is that they are a party that has been elected to power by Poland. And can I also say something? People are talking about how divided Poland is. A few months ago, it looked as if Duda was a shoo-in. He seemed set to win by a clear and decisive margin. The only reason the polls narrowed in Poland, as they have, is yes, there are a lot of divisions in Poland, but also there are the problems, there are the issues which afflict all countries, which have been caused by the pandemic. And those led to a reaction against Duda and against the Law and Justice Party. Duda has another problem, in my opinion, in that he is not actually the true leader of the Law and Justice Party, and he's not the true leader of Poland. Everybody knows that the person who really runs Poland is Mr. Kaczynski, who is not the Prime Minister and is not the President, but is the leader of Law and Justice Party and has been, as I understand it, in government before. but for various reasons has chosen that he's not going to be this time. But nonetheless, we should look at this as Law and Justice Party winning this election after immense pressure. You're absolutely right. The European Union doesn't like this. The reason they don't like it is because they don't like certain aspects of the Law and Justice Party's social policies, not just the issues that you mentioned, which I believe are part of it, but they don't like their economic and social policy either. Their economic policy is a policy which is more interventionist, state interventionist, than the European Union and the neo-globalist order likes. And their welfare policies, their social welfare policies, are also of a sort that the European Union and the neo-globalists around the world don't particularly like. But I think what has particularly incensed them is that I think they thought that because of the pandemic and because of the swing against the Law and Justice Party in Poland, this was going to be a chance to break the sovereigntist alliance, if you like, that is starting to form across Europe. And Poland is very much the linchpin, because unless Italy elects Salvini, or unless France elects Marine Le Pen, someone like her, Poland is the biggest country to be pursuing a sovereigntist position. And Poland and Hungary have been increasingly working together. One of the reasons the European Union can't deprive Hungary, Viktor Orban, of his voting rights on the European Council, as they would dearly love to do, is because Poland, led by the Law and Justice Party, would veto it. And it works the other way round also. So together, these two countries form a significant bloc, and around that bloc, others are starting to coalesce. And of course, if Italy joins them with Salvini, then it will start to gain critical mass. They don't agree on everything. Orban, for example, has good relations with Russia. He just opened Hungary's borders to Russia. He's allowing Russians to visit Hungary despite the pandemic. Poland, under the Law and Justice Party, has a very hostile policy towards Russia. But on the central issue of policy in relation to the EU, they are united. And that is the key issue for both of these countries at the moment. Now, I'm going to say something about the EU's policies. Here again, we see the EU interfering, because that is its word, to an extraordinary degree on on social and family issues. Again, like you, I'm using careful language here, which are ultimately, in most countries around the world, understood to be the sovereign issue of the people who live in those countries. Yet we saw that ugly word used in one of the articles that you quoted about conditionality. In other words, you have to accept certain opinions and certain rules laid down for you by the EU centre, which operates along a sort of nebulous quadrangle of Paris, Brussels, Frankfurt, and Berlin. You have to accept that EU centre's views on issues that are, again, I'm using evasive language, very personal. And you also have to do the same thing on how you organise your courts, how you organise even your elections and things of that kind. You have to do this to a microscopic degree. You have to run your policies, even your economic policies and your welfare policies, in a particular way. And if you don't, then this is somehow considered not just something we don't agree with, but it's something that you have to be absolutely demonized about, attacked and criticized in this apocalyptic way. And now we have all this talk about an existential crisis because Poland has voted in a certain way. The existential crisis is coming because the EU centre is interfering in these issues. You may agree with its policies, you may not agree with these policies, but it is imposing its ideas, which, to be very clear, Poland never signed up to. Polish people never signed up to in that way. It's a conservative Catholic country. It has its own views. It never signed up to these things. And now, because it's a member of the EU, it's been told it must conform to them. That is what is creating an existential crisis for the EU, because more and more people around the EU are kicking back on this. They're pushing back because they don't like to be told by an unelected, amorphous centre, which, as I said, exists somewhere between Brussels, Frankfurt, Berlin and Paris, what their views on these sort of questions should be. And I'm going to say something else. If we're talking about existential crises for the EU, for me, the real existential crisis is these policies, which again are being pushed by the EU centre for debt issuance by the Central European institutions. In other words, to create a single monetary policy backed by a single taxation policy, which countries like Poland, which, by the way, has its own currency. It's stuck to its own currency. The Polish currency is not the euro, it's the zloty. It never signed up to that. It doesn't want it. It's not part of that. That is where the existential crisis comes from. As long as the EU continues along these policies, which I don't think it can ever change because they're now hardwired into the system, you're going to have more and more crises like these and more electorates, like the Polish electorate, pushing back on them. And yes, there are supporters of these policies within Poland, in the small towns and in the countryside, and more in the east of the country. And then there are more, shall we say, socially advanced people in the big cities who may be younger and may have different views. But these are matters that Poles themselves need to be left to sort out by themselves. I think that one of the reasons Duda won the election, despite being, as I said, not the real leader of Poland, and despite the fact that the Law and Justice Party has been buffeted by the effect of the pandemic, is partly because obviously a lot of people like its policies, but also because they're not going to be dictated to by the EU. And I think this needs to be understood, and understood very clearly, if not by the EU, which is, as I said, incapable of understanding it, by people like us and by the kind of people who follow us.
Yeah, great analysis there, Alexander. I completely agree with you. I think that the difference would have been greater if you didn't have all this madness with CV and lockdown. I think the Law and Justice would have won by a greater margin than the 2%, 2-3% that they did win by. Big defeat for the globalists, a very big defeat, because I really think they thought they could break the back of this sovereign state, patriotic, nationalist, call it whatever you want, alliance that has formed between Hungary and Poland and other countries that are waiting. Please, Salvini, please, waiting to get in on that alliance. It must be driving Germany especially crazy, because Germany has always thought of itself as the de facto owner of Poland's economic and internal policy making. You know, Germany's the big neighbor next door. It always felt that it could exert full control over how Poland operates and how it moves. And finally, Alexander, one of the articles, I think it was the European Council article or the Atlantic one. Anyway, one of the articles mentioned Biden. Duda should be scared about Biden. Trump loves Poland. Poland needs to fix its relationship with Russia, but Trump loves Poland. Poland seems to have a kind, soft spot for Trump in the United States. The Biden, inserting that Biden in there, very intentional, and they're trying to get a point across to the people of Poland.
Well, it's a threat. I mean, it's a clear threat. And can I just make a point to, again, this here and now, I am addressing Polish people. Again, whatever your political views, think about this very carefully. You've just been threatened by the country that claims to be protecting you. Yes, at the moment, Donald Trump loves Poland. his party loves Poland. They're supporting Poland very, very strongly. But the Democrats clearly don't like Poland, at least not in anything like the same way. What Poland needs to do is to diversify its sources of support. It needs to open up its doors to other people. It needs to be able to trade and have good relations with all the countries around it. So if it finds itself in a situation where the United States turns against Poland, as the United States can easily do, for whatever reason, that they suddenly turn against Poland.
Yeah.
Well, and Biden, exactly. But I mean, if the United States turns against Poland, Poland is not left without friends, because, of course, Hungary is an important ally, but it's a small country. Germany, as you rightly said, by the way, your analysis of Germany's feelings towards Poland are spot on. I mean, the Germans do have a sense of ownership about Poland. And by the way, Poles, many Poles, resent that intensely. But Poland can play a full and proper game in international affairs if it does what I always said it should do. It should open its policies to the East. A Polish leader needs to go to Moscow and make peace there. And by that doesn't require Poland to make any concessions, because Russia has no territorial claims on Poland. All that is over. All that is over. So just establish peace, build up your friendships, then you can take on anybody around you, from the EU to a Biden-led Washington, wherever they come from, without in any way having to compromise on anything that matters.
Yeah, well said. And the fact that they don't have the euro, Poland, Hungary, also to me means that the EU can't do anything to them.
Well, that's
shut off their ATMs.
That's the other thing. I mean, I'm going to say this. I mean, and I'm sure, by the way, it's played a role. I mean, I haven't, obviously, I'm not on the ground in Poland, but I mean, Polish people are highly educated, by the way. That's another thing. I mean, when people talk about people in the rural areas and in the small towns, it gives the impression that, you know, they're all a bunch of peasants. I mean, that's a complete misreading of Polish society. I mean, this is a highly educated society at every level. But, you know, I am sure they are aware of what has been going on in the EU. And I am sure they've seen what happened in Southern Europe in 2011, 12, 10, whatever. And I'm sure they know perfectly well that if Poland makes the mistake of joining the Eurozone, which, by the way, the previous Polish government, before Law and Justice Party, had indicated that it was going to do, if Poland ever joins the Eurozone, then it is well and truly trapped. It is trapped in a way that it has never been before at any point in its history.
Game over. Yeah.
Game over.
It's the Eurozone. Game over. Yeah. All right. Great analysis, Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe, drop us a comment down below. Real quick, Alexander, you're traveling. I'm still waiting for my new mugs. But anyway, guys, go to the Duran shop. I'll put an image right now on the screen of our new mugs and our new merchandise. Let's go to the Duran shop, pick up some merchandise, help us out. Alexander, any quick words before we sign off?
Yes, I'm quickly. I'm in Prague. I've had to go on a hurried business trip. But the result is, because I was only carrying hand luggage, I dare not risk my valuable and wonderful magic mugs with me. So I can't show them to you. But of course, they are the best mugs in the world, bar none. You can find all sorts of examples on our shop, and you're going to find great things on our shop. You'll see that I'm wearing a Duran t-shirt. I went to one of the meetings with the people that I was meeting, who are important people, wearing this shirt. Again, you know, make a wonderful impression. They're the best shirts in the world, just as they're the best mugs in the world. They're made from 100% cotton. They're incredibly beautifully fitting. This is a long-sleeved t-shirt. We also have short-sleeved t-shirts, V-neck shirts, tank tops and the best polo shirts in the world. And we've got hats, hoodies, and stickers. And we've got an expanding a library of ebooks. And Alex is refreshing our shop with great new products. So you support us by coming to our shop. You can be the owner of these great things. And Alex will just remind you quickly how you can do that.
Just go to the duranshop.com. You'll find the link in the description box down below. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.